once the library is installed, we can now generate our third-party service. And we're going to use the Angular CLI for it. We are going to do NgGenerate. We're going to generate a service, pass the path to store effects, and we're going to call it the lowered threads effect service. So the service has been now generated. Let's have a look at the service that we have created here. So it's simply an injectable. In the constructor, we are going to inject the threads service. This is the service that will allow us to do HTTP calls to our backend. Another possibility would have been to simply inject the HTTP module in here and use HTTP directly from inside the effects service. But we are keeping the HTTP calls in a separate service because there is always the possibility that this might be used elsewhere in the application. So what we're going to do here is we are going to also inject here the actions observable of NgRx. So we are going to call it actions $, because this is indeed an observable, and this is an observable of type actions. So actions is imported from the NgRx effects module. So how does the actions observable work? What does it do? For each action that we dispatch to the store, it will emit a value which is the action object itself. Now what we want to do is we want to detect that an action of type lowered user threads action was emitted, and in response to that we want to do an HTTP request. We are going to define here a member variable. We are going to call it user threads $, meaning that it's an observable, and we are going to annotate this with the @effect decorator. We are going to understand exactly what the effect decorator does in a moment. Now we are going to define this observable by basing ourselves on the actions observable. We are going to filter only the actions that are of type lowered user threads option. So for that we have here the operator of type, and in here we are going to pass in the type of the lowered user threads action. So this essentially acts like a filter. Now once this happens, once we receive an action of this type, we want to switch map into an HTTP call that we are about to do. So we really don't need the action value here in this case. We simply want to do a switch map to a call to threads service. And we want to switch map to lowered user threads. At this point, we need to define what to do when the lowered user threads call returns from the backend. So what we're going to do here is we are going to map the value that we receive from the backend, which is of type all user data. And using this payload that we received from the backend, we are going to create here a new action. We are going to create an instance of user threads loaded action. And we are going to pass it in here, the all user data transfer object that we received from the backend. Now what will happen here is that this new action that we just created will be dispatched into the store. And how is this happening? This is because of the effect decorator, so it's really what it means. This effect decorator will mark this observable as being a source of actions. So we don't need to, for example, subscribe to this observable and then inside here we take this value and we dispatch this to the store. This is not needed. This is done for us implicitly thanks to the @effect decorator. Now what we have not defined here is what should happen if the call to load user threads fails, so if there is a problem in the backend. We're going to add error handling to our application in a future lesson. Right now, let's see this in action.